One question I want to ask you, just about diversity and inclusion in the hobby. I know I've heard several different conversations about how to get different people, men, women, different ages, ethnicities into the hobby. And we talk about growing it out. What are some things you think that, because I even racked my brain about this a lot of times, because I think about, Geoff, let me give you my background. I came into the hobby as a child, shopping and buying cars at retail. My father introduced me to the hobby and talked to me about it and who Willie Mays was and Willie Stargell and a lot of older players, Hank Aaron, Pete Rose, who were players like that. And then I started autograph collecting for many different years and met a lot of players. Almost every known player that someone could think of, I've met them, talked to them, got their autograph. But it all started from shopping cars at retail. So how do we get different people from inner cities and other places more involved in the hobby?
It's a great question, FD, and it's a question that needs a solution and needs a lot of people focused on it, because the hobby does need to get more diverse. I mean, it is, and it's trending that way. It is trending that way.
It is,
but it also has a long way to go. I don't know what the exact answer to that is, but what I do feel it's extremely important. I do feel like the hobby needs to be a very welcoming, inclusive environment. I have re-entering into the hobby as a middle-aged white man, as most people, in the hobby are. My experience coming into the hobby was a good experience. And I've heard that it can be uneven for others, and even if everybody is nice and welcoming, just the very fact that there's not other people who look like you and who you can relate to, have the same background as you, I'm sure makes it a little bit intimidating, even if everybody is welcoming and nice and everything of that nature. So I think it's just something that hopefully we can get rolling with, getting more diverse people into the hobby. I thought Raphael Prism God here in Atlanta had a good idea with Culture Collision. I don't think it's ever fully executed to his full vision, but like one thing he wanted to do with that show is he wanted to try to bring different cultures from Atlanta into the same room together to experience the hobby. And he was trying to bring in some of the sneaker community, for example, and he did it to a degree. Like there was representation from other groups. I'd like to see it even taken a step further. I think if you can make things like card shows have more of an entertainment element to them, if there's a collision of music and card shows, if there's a collision of, pop culture and card shows, then I think you can, maybe it becomes a more open event to more people who are just kind of curious to come into it. And I know that's something that is on Fanatics' mind. Fanatics started their Fanatics events division, and I met the folks running that. And one of the things that they talked about was wanting to make the events appeal to a much wider audience, and that includes a diverse audience as well. And they want to do that by making card shows more of a fan fest type of experience. And I think that will help. So I think that the more, and frankly, it's also on content creators like me to showcase more diverse, to show more people in our content, to show more diversity in our content. And frankly, I've been guilty of a lot of our videos. You watch them, even now, you watch them from start to finish, and everyone in the video is white, a white man. Everybody in the video is, right. And, that's not great. And so I think we need to do a better job as content creators of making sure that we've got diversity represented in our videos, because we want people to see others, that look like them and then come into the hobby. This last video that we did this last weekend from the Burbank Card Show, like the first scene in the video, we put she breaks at the beginning of the video. I'm like, that's great. Like, let's put a woman at the beginning of the video. That's smart. Like, let's show this isn't just men, that are in the hobby, but that there are women in the hobby as well. I got Stephanie Garcia from Mama Breaks on the Jeff Wilson show next week, and again to try to bring more exposure to women in the hobby. I think it's on us incumbent on us to continue to do all those things.
I think it's on all of us, because we started Rolling with FD as a family to showcase women, children, and people of color throughout the hobby. I started out as a child in Chicago on the South Side going to shows, and I'm the only person that looked like me at a show. But that drove me. I'm this kind of person that drove me to make make sure I knew what I was talking about, make sure I did my research, make sure that I was on point as soon as I walked in the door at 14 years old. I want to make sure I knew about everything I should know from an autograph perspective. What was the career stats of this player? What are these car values? What makes this car rare? I want to know all that. And I think that I look at myself, and if my father never really walked in the room and said something to me about collecting, and then being him, my mom being an inspiration, because a lot of times I think people in the hobby that enter shows and people don't look like them need support system on how they grow and develop in the hobby. Because I'm right now in my life, I'm not the same person I was at 12, 13, and someone helped me navigate my way through that. And I think a lot of times too, education on, we talked about earlier as far as different cars, product, and what you want to collect. How do you take care of your cars? What's the penny sleeve top loader? All that kind of stuff is very instrumental. And I know there are several great people in the hobby that have children at shows, bring them in, sit them down, and basically run classes at the show to teach them, walk them around. Then how do you navigate? What's your etiquette at a show? Junior and I talk about this all the time. When you go into a show and you're walking around, how are you shaking hands? What's your eye contact looking like? If you want to negotiate, how do you negotiate? I took him to Blue Sports Cars. You've been to Blue Sports Cars here in LA. And he told me, Dad, I want to trade some cars. And the first question I asked him was, well, do you know the value of what's in your hand? And he looked at me and said, no, I don't. We got to work on that. Those are all things that are important. I think all of us have a hand in making sure. I'm a content creator. I want to make sure I showcase, just like you're talking about, different people that are at the show and showcase them as well. And let's get their stories told, things like that. I think we all can lead in our own way.
Yeah.